Hello, and welcome to Feedback for the week of July 7th. We're just, 3 days after our nation's glorious birthday. Happy birthday, United States.
Did you blow up anything?
No, but there were a handful of explosions.
Did things blow up around you?
Yes. There were some explosions in the neighborhood that just, you could tell how drunk the person probably was that was lighting them on fire. And yeah, it's... Well, granted, I'm from up in Northern California near Richmond, where you really do have to sometimes wonder if it's a bullet. And so I'm not a big fan of the things that go boom in real life, in my games, my movies. More the merrier. So, we'd like to introduce our panel. We have Patrick Klepek, and joining us as a special guest, we have Jeffrey Zatkin from EEDAR, which is Electronic Entertainment Design and Research, a wonderful research group, and we're going to be talking about your new study in a little bit on the show, but thank you so much for being here, Jeffrey.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And, of course, Abby Happy. Hi.
Hi.
Did you blow anything up?
No, I listened to just barrages of home fired off fireworks outside my apartment. Well, my cats freaked the hell out, and I wondered how many people lose fingers on the 4th of July.
Some kid disfigured himself somewhere in Northern California, I read, and I imagine there were a handful of others. So be safe, kids.
Really, Adam? A handful?
A handful, yeah.
Right.
Hey, NPD week, yay, numbers, arbitrary sense of competition between companies in a business sense. Patrick, how did they do?
Kind of how we expected. The two big winners in May were Red Dead Redemption, which sold, an upwards of 1.5 million, almost a million on Xbox alone, and Super Mario Galaxy 2, which sold 563,000 copies. It was a good month for a couple of games.
And a couple of games that came out late in May. They came out, about 4 days apart from one another in the week of the 20th of May, I believe.
Yeah, so both these games are off to a really, solid beginning start. It'll be interesting to see, given that there's not that much coming out this summer, especially of a blockbuster status that is going to, ignoring StarCraft 2, which is a PC outlier. But in the console sense, there's not too much. So these are probably going to be the games that sort of dominate the charts going forward, but how much they do so in the next 3 months will be pretty interesting to see.
Now, on the hardware side, okay, no surprise, DS, Wii, 360 at 194,000. Is that a good month for Microsoft or a bad month?
It's, again, everything's down in general. Hardware is down in general. That's a lot of the reason you're seeing Move and Kinect this fall is a way to sort of kickstart a lot of the hardware movement, because there's already, most of the hardcore gamers have their machines. Now it's a matter of trying to appeal to a larger audience, which is why you see the Wii and the DS getting that extra couple 100,000 copies, because the hardware is appealing to a much more different audience.
Jeffrey, you do keep an eye on things like this. Do you see this as a sign of middling health, or do you see it as something in decline?
I think a lot of it's just, people are ramping up for the holiday season. It's the summer. They really do have their games. People are going out and buying it. There's new SKUs coming out. There's not a lot of reason to just immediately run out to the store right now and go grab something.
Now, I think one of the questions that has always plagued a lot of us is that it's always a dry summer. This seems to be a little less dry, actually, than in some summers past, but it would seem just kind of a no-brainer. Kids are out of school. This is the perfect time to release a major game, yet no company seems to ever want to step up and do that.
Well, that is actually one of the things that we talk to publishers about a lot, is just spreading out their portfolio, but also look at where the financial or fiscal quarters fall. June is the end of Q2, which means we have 3 more months before the end of Q3. Most people who are big companies are publicly traded, they have to get everything out kind of by the end of the quarter. They say it'll come out here to keep their shareholders happy. So we kind of have that summer doldrum of, hey, we don't have to keep our shareholders happy. We've said the game's going to come out Q3. It'll come out right at the end and squeak in. And this was something when I was a dev I never even knew.
So it's actually worth pointing out that you have come into sort of the analytical side of the video game industry as someone who worked at Monolith.
Yep, Monolith, and before that, Sony Online Entertainment. Before that, Variant Interactive. I spent about 10 years as a dev. Yeah,
you just brought back some memories. Sorry, haven't thought about Variant. So, all right. I guess, is there anything else on the horizon? Are we even looking? I don't even know if we're going to start to see an uptick. Usually we had that Batman Arkham Asylum where we have BioShock kind of waiting there at the end of August to kind of go, hey, here's a brief respite. I guess we have Mafia 2 and...
Crackdown's the big
Crackdown
game.
2 obviously
Crackdown
just came out today.
StarCraft are the big games for July, and then August. There's certainly a chance for something to squeak in there that's not there yet and kind of steal the summer away. But there doesn't seem to be a game. It seems like Red Dead Redemption is kind of kind of the summer game.
And given the size and scope and breadth of that game,
People are going to be playing for it for
anyone
a while.
who bought it in May can still be enjoying that by July, unless they're crazy people like us who hauled ass through it in about a matter of a week.
Abby's already 100%ed it.
Yeah, and once again, Abby, you're crazy.
You don't even want to know how far in Crackdown 2 I am. It's disgusting.
So let's move on to our second story. Xbox Live Arcade, the virtual browser is coming. What is this virtual browser? Have people wanted it?
It's called Destination Arcade. It's launching the next week or so. It's essentially, Microsoft further admitting that they just have too much content. And if you've tried to look for anything on Xbox Live, it's a compliment that there's so much stuff, but it's impossible to find a lot of things. They streamlined it a little bit better with the dashboard. The fact that there still isn't a full search functionality for everything on Xbox Live is something they really need to figure out. But Destination Arcade is essentially this new place that you can log into. It will give you recommendations. It makes the user ratings a much bigger part of the experience. It's essentially looking a lot of what Apple has done with the iTunes model, trying to condense that a little bit more specifically for Xbox Live Arcade rather than like all of Xbox Live in general.
Now, does it look like it's going to really ape that Apple model? I guess my only concern there is I find, especially with the books on my iPad, that if I just want to come up with a good idea, it's really shoehorning me into just kind of the things that I'm assuming they've been encouraged to highlight as an option. Is this going to offer me a little bit more sense of that, it can really guide me into something that's going to make me happy?
Hopefully. That's really hard to tell until we see it sort of in practice the next week or so. But I think the idea seems to be taking all of those user rankings from the past, 24 months, then calling that into this new service that actually can give you it's as easy as when you're scrolling through, you can pick up a game. When you find a game, you just hit Y, and it'll give you recommendations based on Earthworm Jim. So then maybe Rocket Knight Adventures comes up. The other cool thing it has is that
I just think they're going to do the categories that Netflix does, where it's dark critical acclaimed. Like actually, that
I also
you go
like
through and there's
the
just
Netflix ones, but it's like, this is because you
So
liked Law and
specific.
Order Season 3. Yeah, because Season 3 was the only one I liked.
yeah.
It's the Netflix one. It's like, God forbid I'm seeing like a Fassbinder movie, then everything's moving in a really scary direction because I watched The Muppets last week. So if you want puppets with existential problems speaking German, you're kind of SOL.
The one nice thing that Destination Arcade does do is that it's Xbox doesn't have a web browser, so it's hard for sometimes Microsoft to necessarily. You can't go onto your Xbox Live and be communicated everything about what's going on in the Xbox world. You kind of have to go to Major Nelson's blog or somewhere. So in Destination Arcade, there's actually like a news feed that will show you like the sales. So if you want to see what is the sale of the week, it will be there. You click a button, it'll automatically bring you to that space. So essentially finding ways to filter us out of the conversation.
You were saying, Jeffrey.
So more of a Steam model then.
Yeah. I think it's trying to a little bit more contained where they can promote things better because so much Xbox Live Arcade, especially even more so than the normal like retail market. If you miss that first week, you're buried.
A
You're
lot
gone.
gets lost in there.
Which is the same problem that Apple has with their store.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just it drives me
nothing.
crazy. I believe there are so many good indie games that are out there, and I've said this on this show and on many other things. I feel so remiss in my job that I have to wait for other people to discover them before I'm even made aware that there's something that good out there. It's just there's just I wish there was a clearinghouse, something that kind of really helped out these small companies so that the right games got the attention because PopCap's going to do just fine. Everyone else could they deserve a leg up.
So hopefully.
Our third one, this is me good, so it's going to move immediately into what Jeffrey is here for. Xbox Live, Stephen Toulouse, he said that hardcore gamers have been wrong for 10 years. Well, it's a good headline. What did he say?
This is, Kinect did not have the best reception coming out of the gate from E3.
No.
Not necessarily for casuals and not really for hardcore. It didn't seem like they kind of nailed either section quite yet, at least based on what they showed at E3. So on, Major Nelson's podcast, Stephen Toulouse was on there talking about sort of some of the response and specifically what was pulled out. One of the quotes that I think it reads a lot worse than actually how it was portrayed on the podcast. But he said, I have one thing to say to the hardcore gamer who says Kinect is nothing for them. Those games will have achievements, so don't tell me you're not going to play at least some of them. He's absolutely right in that respect.
Okay.
So you are like, I know you're going to play that. He's like, let's look back at the track record of the hardcore gamer. Should be a console with an Ethernet port? Oh, it'll never succeed. Paying for multiplayer? Oh no, that's not good. I don't like avatars. I won't buy anything that goes to my avatar. The Wii, I mean, no offense to your hardcore gamers, you've kind of been wrong a lot in the past 10 years.
Well, what was the implication on the Wii? Because the hardcore gamer was pretty bullish on the Wii.
I think you just sort of lumped it in there, but I
Yeah.
think everyone was kind of genuinely excited about the Wii the first time it was.
I mean, it's... I see where the man is coming from, but it's really, I think, hiding what are some of the more innate problems with Kinect. I actually just wrote a small article for Adweek that they didn't even try to present it as something that the hardcore gamer was going to be interested in. I've actually never seen anything like that before where, even when it came to the social networking, it was Lollipop and Velveteen, and it's just like, boom, you just alienated your hardcore base. And then that includes female gamers, who I think, we're deservedly insulted by the fact that people named Lollipop and Velveteen were somehow representing them out there. Without getting that hardcore invested or interested in it, then you kind of lose that important sounding board online that I really do think was responsible for the initial success of the Wii. It's that the hardcores came in, it just created such a storm surrounding it that, if you were less aware of what was happening in gaming, well, you had to at least be inquiring, hey, is this thing as cool as what I'm hearing? Jeffrey, I'm looking to you to see if I'm crazy or not.
I can't tell you that I know a ton about the best way to market this, but honestly, maybe they don't need to go to the hardcore. I mean, we know about it. The whole purpose of marketing and advertising is to make people aware of it. It's not like we can go out and buy it. They have plenty of time right before that to go, hey, look at all these cool toys. What they're trying to do right now is to get to an audience that doesn't know about games.
But Nintendo got to that audience by going through the hardcore, and I think that is
partially. But I mean, did you see their commercials?
They were very clever.
I mean, they were very clever. They were mainstream. They did a lot more advertising dedicated or directed towards the mainstream. I mean, when the PS3 came out, well, there were levitating babies with the spooky little eyes in those crow commercials.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's right.
That's a radically different approach to marketing than we going, hey, come check this out. We're pretty cool.
I think what part of what might have happened so far with the response with Kinect is that if you look at the last pre-E3, the last time they talked anything about it was at Tokyo Game Show, and they had this. They trotted out this video that had Keiji Inafune, Hideo Kojima, and a lot of other prominent game designers really extolling the virtues of then Natal, saying we're really excited about this tech. The one thing that people really rallied behind, and we did, that was on Kinect was Dance Central, a game made by Harmonix, very talented group, doing something that not necessarily hardcore gamers want to do, but respecting that they did something really interesting and an effective use of the technology.
Yes. Yeah.
And everything that we've heard about Natal and Kinect going into E3 has been, look, recognize that it's not necessarily for you, but we've got designers and guys that are really excited about these things, and we didn't see any of those things. We saw Dance Central, but outside of that, there wasn't in practice those hardcore designers using this for interest. And maybe that's coming. Maybe that's TGS.
I bet you're going to see that. I bet you're going to see it before it comes out. But, Sony and Microsoft are both very good companies. They're good at putting out really good games. We get some very high-quality games from all of them each year. I think they're going to be showing that stuff a little closer to actually launching to get the hardcore excited. I still think this is just, hey, guys, we've got cool new stuff. Trying to expand their audience.
There were smaller applications, too, that I think we've discussed on here that would at least get my attention more, which would be to say, while I'm playing a game, send message to this person on my friends list, without actually having to, back out into that menu. I mean, just like nice tweaks for those of us, who don't want to... those are the applications that interest me, even if the games don't right now. I know that's a hard thing to show someone, but even if you're in like one of those montage videos that they show at E3 and they show just a little bit of how that interaction works, I would have been more intrigued than watching animals.
So that tiger's really damn cute.
It is cute.
I guess
you couldn't teach children tigers are cute because they will grow up and eat them. I'm just saying.
You're really concerned.
You've never been to the zoo.
What was it, 2 years ago? San Francisco, Christmas, tiger, ate people.
Those kids were intoxicated and they were harassing the animals.
And they weren't really kids, to be fair.
Yeah, they were more
they were grown
like
adults that kind of deserved to have a chomping. So, probably didn't deserve, but
dark turn.
I might say deserve.
Okay, let's just move away from this altogether. Jeffrey, I guess they're trying to reach the casual with Kinect, which I completely see. But also, are we looking at
mainstream? Because there is a big difference.
Okay. Well, are they trying to reach someone that already owns a 360? Or are they trying to reach someone who they expect to pay what looks like will probably be a rather significant price tag to get both the console and that technology for, Dance Central and like a handful and like, Tigers named Skittles and stuff like that.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, how many copies did Wii Sports equivalently sell for the Wii?
Exactly. But I mean, that they don't have a Wii Sports. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is they don't have that Wii Sports. They have a higher price point. I mean, they do have a sports game, and Sony has a sports game. And the problem is that what I always thought made Wii Sports work so well, it wasn't the sports part. It was the Wii part. It was the first thing to do that. It was new. It was innovative. And it was just also Nintendo's got this charm thing down to
And
a
It was
science.
also the first thing that you had for a while.
Exactly.
Yep, absolutely.
It was it. It was just that was the first game that came with it. It was fun to have all your friends over to show them how the tennis works. Go bowling, and that's why I played so much of it. There was nothing really else for it.
I mean, that's the thing. Without the spark of the new coming from Move and Connect, that's where I just, there isn't that. I expected more of a game changer out of Kinect, I guess, because it doesn't have like a controller. It's just like, okay, now this is my Wiimote. And
You got to remember, too, that when the Wii came out, it took, almost 2 years before people really figured out how to use it well, aside from a couple Nintendo games.
right.
You're going to something that doesn't even have controllers. I suspect it's going to take us at least 2 years to really, really make that cool.
Now, does it have 2 years?
Yeah,
You think so? Okay.
I think it has legs.
All right, Jeffrey, let's get to the point where we explain why you are here with us. Outside
no,
of the fact
just
that you are a
make
charming
stuff.
personality and we like having you here.
Oh.
Phew, got past that one. So you with EEDAR, you guys did a study called you just released a study called The Influence of Professional Critic Reviews. This is something that I personally have wanted to see for a very long time. I know that Abby and I were talking to your colleague and coworker, Jesse Davidich.
Yeah.
And we were thinking like, hey, well, we would really like if you did a study. He goes, funny you should say that. There might be something coming down the pike. And here it is. If you wouldn't mind just explaining first what you were looking for and what your methodology was of trying to figure out how professional critics may affect game purchase, decision making.
Sure. And actually, as I want to start out, I just want to give a shout out. SMU Guildhall.
Oh, yes, of course.
They were fantastic partners. They helped us do this. They provided facilities, helped us get all of our subjects who were college students going there. So just say they did a great job.
And that was Ron Jenkins over there,
Yep.
who is an awesome dude. So
He is indeed.
Shouts out to Ron.
And thank PopCap, who provided copies of Plants vs. Zombies for all of our people who played. So what we were looking to do was kind of check out and see what was the influence that critic reviews had on people who were playing games. And so that was our single variable for the entire study. Everything else we duplicated. So we did this over 3 days. We did it on the SMU campus, had just under 200 subjects, and each of them came in and played Plants vs. Zombies for 20 minutes. We screened them out. Nobody'd seen it before. Nobody'd really heard of it. So these were all people with no exposure to the game. And the only thing we did that was different was, before they started to play the game, they got to read a little pamphlet about it. And one of the pamphlets just told about the game. Another one told about the game but had high review scores in it. Say, oh, this is a fantastic game, both numeric and just kind of game of the year kind of things. And the third group got low review scores instead of high. So we had a group exposed to high scores, no scores, and low scores. So they, after reading that, they played the game for 20 minutes, which in Plants vs. Zombies is a couple of levels. And afterwards, they were asked a couple of questions. One was, what would you rate this game? Kind of like a critic. We promised them $10 for doing the studies. Do you want the $10 or do you want a copy of the game? And then would you recommend it to a friend? So that was kind of how we laid the groundwork for the study, how we did it. They were all sequestered off. So it really was, the only variable in there was exposure to review scores beforehand.
And what did you find?
So, and this was actually, so I have a psychology degree in addition to being a video game designer for a decade or so. So it was really fascinating for me. This is called the anchoring effect, which basically comes down to making a good first impression or a bad first impression. So when you introduce me saying, hey, this is this really cool guy, Jeff, people are going to think a little better of me because of that. And that's the same kind of thing. So we showed people who hadn't seen this before high scores and low scores, and then said, oh, go play the game yourself. The guys who saw the high scores rated the game 20% higher when they reviewed it themselves. So that's the difference between like an 8 out of 10 and a 6 out of 10 compared to the low review scores. The guys who saw the high review scores were twice as likely to take the game instead of the cash. That's a huge difference, and that's after playing the game themselves. So, even after forming their own opinion, they still had a major influence.
Now, with people with the low review scores, was it equitable there? Did they decide that they liked it even less than they actually did, in essence?
So the kind of cool thing was, if you look at the review score that the control group gave, it was kind of right in the middle of the two. So the group that saw high review scores judged it less than that, more towards what the control group did. The group that saw the low review scores judged it higher than that, so closer to what the control group did.
So in both cases, they didn't agree with the fake,
Right.
reviews, but they still moved.
They still moved higher or lower,
Right.
but they still, the critic review wasn't an absolute thing there. It was just an influence on it. And it even stayed for a while. When we asked, would you recommend this to a friend, the guys who saw the high reviews were 40% more likely to then go out and say, oh yeah, I'd recommend this to a friend. And those are crazy numbers.
Now, so what do you? Okay, so we're three reviewers in a room. So what are we inadvertently doing to people when we say we like something or we don't like something?
Well, hopefully you're steering them towards, we were just talking about earlier how many games come out, and how hard it is to find, out of the thousands of games out there, to play the good ones. You guys are really helping people, just screen things down, because, I work at a company that all we do is look at games all day long, every day. I don't have time to play every game that comes out. Somebody at my company plays every game that comes out. And it takes a company worth of people to do that. So you guys help people at least pick games that they most likely have more fun on. And as long as you're honest on your reviews, that's a really good thing. Unlike movies where, what necessarily people, say you take Transformers, horrible reviews, amazing box office success. That's very common in the movie industry. What the critics like isn't necessarily what the mainstream audience goes and spends a lot of money on. For game reviewers right now, because there's kind of a big trust in game reviewers, there actually is. And as long as you guys keep being honest, if you guys start taking bribes and doing other things, it'll be more of the way of movies.
Damn it. Yeah. You know how we live. We ain't taking none of that right now. Well, Jeffrey, one of the things in your study was also that you didn't see a direct effect. You saw something that you term more casual, that were more influencing the primary influencers, which are the friends, which is the word of mouth. It's if Abby says this game is the best, that's not truly the incentive for someone to go, I'm buying it right now. Mm-hmm. It then goes to somebody else who then kind of gives a sense of, you're making the right choice to their buddy.
Well, you can get both. You can get people who go, oh, I love Abby, I'm going to go buy the game she says. But you also get a lot of people. How many times, Adam, have you been asked, hey, is this a good game? And you haven't played it yourself, but you know somebody else who has. And you're like, oh, yeah, Abby said it was a good game, so I'll recommend it. So that's where you start getting the secondhand influence, because everybody still wants to go, oh, yeah, I know something about that.
So, were the findings... And you guys, if you want to peg in with
this
the question,
is fascinating.
jump in
I'm
there.
sorry, we were just sitting here.
I know.
I forgot that we were supposed to say things.
It's weird, Jeffrey. It's like having someone talk about yourself. Because, I personally, I think I've always wondered if anyone gives a crap, when we have the reviews. I know that hardcore base that really probably has already made up their mind about the game and really just kind of wants, the back and forth.
Validation.
Yeah, the validation if we're saying the right thing. But in terms of that audience who I think we'd really do a greater benefit for if they were actually hearing us. Is it safe to say that maybe our jobs have greater relevance than I thought last week?
I think so. But I think we've all grown up, none of us are so old that we were around before there was a lot of media reviews. Movies are older than us, God forbid, literature. There's a lot of things. We're used to hearing reviews. We're used to hearing recommendations. And again, it's just one of those things. If you look at the number of games that come out, nobody has enough money, heaven forbid time, to go get them all. So you want to see if you can make your best investment.
This is funny because it's something I've argued for quite some time, that I've never really put game reviews in the same realm as movie reviews. I see them closer to restaurant and theater reviews because just that cost of admission and the amount of time and like the quality of life that you're kind of abandoning on just the hope that it's worth it's worthwhile.
You also see like in games reviews, it's very specifically. You see this in movies too sometimes, but like spoilers are a huge thing. Like the experience is something like. Video game reviews are very much trying to convey the experience without spoiling the experience itself, which is a separate
Well, that happens in
debate.
movie reviews too, depending on the movie, I think. But,
Yeah.
And it's give or take. I mean, for example, they did a great job on The Matrix. Nobody knew what that was about.
Yeah.
But you look at a lot of movies nowadays, you see the ending.
But to your point, when The Matrix came out, I didn't read a damn review of it. I don't think I've ever read a review of The Matrix.
That was a word of mouth
That was
movie.
all of my friends going, and that was seeing the trailers and all my friends going, oh my God, we have to go see The Matrix opening night. I don't care if we have to wait in line for 3 hours outside the Cineplex. We're going to see it.
And again, those are few and far between. I mean, so having been a game dev for almost 10 years, everybody likes to think, if my game's badass, it will sell. And that's true, but that's only true to a certain amount. Without marketing, even if you have the best game ever, nobody's heard of it.
Right.
You get the lucky, couple a year. How many do you think a year honestly come out and everybody has that good viral thing?
Game-wise, I think it's very rare for games. The one that shocked me from last year was Borderlands, which I felt that only kind of got its act together in like the final days before that game launched.
That and Batman.
And Batman, too.
They're like, oh, that looks like it could be good, but then in like the final 2 weeks just exploded.
Now, Batman, I do believe, and is probably why I think you want to have a hardcore base that's interested in the game, is people were slowly becoming aware because of one genius thing that either Warner Brothers or the PR company did. About the first 4 hours of the game was sent to the press, and I played it. Mm-hmm. And I wrote up a preview, and usually I try to be pretty even keel in a preview, and I was like, there's something kind of awesome here that I played 4 hours. This is better than any full length, Batman game or superhero game I've ever played, and that with that momentum, it just seemed to pop right there at the end of all this.
You guys mentioned that in your study about perhaps game developers and publishers looking to getting things to the press earlier so things like that can happen more often.
So what you're saying is like more of a long lead marketing strategy from the gaming industry?
I know it sounds crazy.
I know. Abby, what do you think of that
I don't know. We usually joke that when we don't get something early, there's probably a reason. This is the other side of that.
Yeah, and that is a hard one because we actually did, a little bit of research into a lot of these areas because, that's really great for good games.
Yeah.
When you get a mediocre or a bad game, the same thing. How many games come out? If you play an hour of a demo or even 20 minutes of a demo, you're like, that's about all I need. That could be a lost sale at that point.
Yeah. Especially for a demo, because
story.
you can burn out people that were otherwise interested in buying the game and otherwise would have.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, as a dev working on a demo, if your game was done, it'd be in the store. So you're being asked, it's like, hey, I know your game isn't done yet, but can you make a badass version of the game that people can play that will sell it while you're trying to get your game out? And you're like, expletive.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what E3 is for a lot of you. It's like, that it has to work perfectly because, my God, if, some blogger sees a dropped frame, well, clearly this thing is going to be terrible 8 months from now after they keep on working on it.
Let me tell you, E3 for us was always, hell, because we'd spend a month beforehand prepping a game to show that was a year or two from being done, and it would all be kludged or, fake code, because if the game was done, we'd have it out. And then you spend a month doing that. You then spend 3 or 4 days giving the same demo every 10 to 15 minutes. And then you spend 2 to 3 weeks ripping out all the stuff that you
just so you could go back to making the game.
It's so terrible.
Wow.
See, this is what these guys do. There's a lot more work than I think a lot of you were thinking out there. So I guess the other part that I found interesting is that you were actually talking about like demos. Mm-hmm. Incorporating, the positive reviews into something like at the head of a demo, not the back of a demo. I mean, you really seem to think that positive reviews have really, really can influence people in a heavy way.
If you have a really good game and you have really good reviews, why not let people know that? I mean, we've seen in almost every type of media, if there's really favorable feedback, it's kind of that hop on the bandwagon, anchoring, there's many different effects that go in. Let people know about it. If you have something that, you think is truly awesome, tell people. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of marketing, awareness, and we're cool.
Now, I guess my question is, why isn't that happening? And this is primarily why, when a game is done, don't they sit on it for a little while so that they can drum up a good marketing strategy? I mean, is there that much capital that's tied up in the game that they just got to start seeing a return immediately?
Remember when I was talking about that fiscal quarter thing?
Yeah.
20 minutes ago? That really does play a lot into it. And that, you want to give your dev team as much time as you can. Because the more time, especially at the end, the more time you can polish, usually the better the game is. Those last couple months are magic. It's when the whole thing comes together, you polish it. Because it's hard to balance a game that you can't play. It's hard to balance a game that isn't done yet. It's hard to put that final polish on. But a lot of the time, if your team doesn't hit that early enough, it's like, hey, cool, we're about done. It's like, oh, let's get it out the door. It's an expensive thing. When you think about, even just on salary cost, if you have a team that's 80 people, you can be burning, millions of dollars, between salary, rent, healthcare, all of that. You can be burning millions of dollars every couple months while you sit on that. And you really need a good ROI, return on investment, to be able to do that. That being said, if you've invested, $20 million in a game already, maybe a little bit more so that you can push it out, not a bad thing. And that's actually part of my company's mission. We work with a lot of publishers looking at data trends and saying, how can we help you make more money? Because if they make more money, we get more good games, they get bigger budgets, more teams, and everybody wins.
See? I like that daisy chain.
It works out very well. I know that demos. I know every time I've seen you guys do a presentation, demos always that's like a really, you see designers kind of throwing up their hands at those. Publishers don't know what to do with them. It almost seems like the recommendation is, if you know you have a good game, don't do a demo, because can it really just do more harm than good in that scenario?
It could. So as a game, you actually have two different points of view. You have the gamer's point of view and the publisher developer's point of view. The gamer's point of view is, I would love to try before I buy. Almost always.
Of course, sure.
Yeah. The publisher developer's point of view is, if it's a good game, sure, but it's a real art to make a demo. It takes a long time, and if you make a bad demo, even if you have a good game, you might lose sales. If you have a mediocre game, it's hard to make a really good demo, you might lose sales. There's a lot of downside to try before you buy as a studio. There's a lot of risk. Honestly, it's a lot easier to put out a good trailer. Anybody can get their game look good in a trailer. And I've been really excited with some trailers.
Yeah, I think we all have.
Oh,
there's
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's been trailers where I'm like, well, that was probably the high point of this game, but it was a very,
At least it was a good trailer.
Point.
Yeah.
Now,
it's hard. It's interactive.
The last time I can remember a demo really changed. We go back to BioShock, but that was a game that when the demo dropped, that changed everyone's. That went from like, well, the reviews are doing really well, I'm thinking about getting it. When that demo hit, that changed everything for that game.
But remember, when those reviews for BioShock came out, how Take-Two's stock went up markedly.
It all happened at once.
It was
the
just
demo dropped, the reviews dropped, and everyone freaked out.
I'm just pointing this out. Came out pretty much that same week that Batman Arkham Asylum did. I think it's a magic
second
week.
or third week of August.
Yeah, and it's like after the drought, if you have untested IP or you have something a little bit dicey like Batman that has a history of crappy games attached to the license, people have been so starved for good content for the past 3 months that, you could probably have the original 50 Cent game come out there and it would do just fine. But that's a great way to start a franchise. That's
something the game industry needs to do more. Look at movies. How many big movies release head to head? They don't. They spread out over the weekends, so there's one good release every week. Why the hell aren't we doing that?
Yeah, we've been asking that for a while.
We've been asking that. I think we're all on the same page. Dear game industry, please listen to this man. He knows what he's talking about. I do want to talk about what you think the impact of this study is going to be. I think there's that part where all of us are just kind of fascinated to just know kind of what our jobs do.
Validate our jobs, please.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Rather than
we're
us
the guy
reviewing something's reviewing, sort of. I don't know.
We think complainers about review scores, are looking for the validation that we have been yearning for and probably just got during the course of feedback today. But one thing you didn't do is discern if the numerical score had a greater impact upon the subject or the hyperbolic text saying like, hey, this is game of the year.
Game of the year versus 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. No, and it's something, we learn from doing this, things that we may do a follow-up study. I'd love to we took a fairly high-reviewed game, and we did that. I'd love to take a low-reviewed game and see if the opposite's true. If after people played for 20 minutes, they're still more likely. There's a lot of spin-off and further studies we could do on this, but we wanted to bite off something very simple, very direct, with one single variable that we could say, here's the only thing we changed. Check this out.
Now, we are obviously subject to a great deal of manipulation from the marketing arms of a lot of the game publishers, not, money in an envelope or anything like that. Do you think this study's going to further, strengthen their resolve to try to, do whatever they can to try to kind of shape reviews in a certain direction because this shows that there is a great deal of value in it?
Probably, but
Great.
Realistically, this only goes so far because as soon as people stop trusting game reviews, this will have less of an effect. So it's kind of the thing where you could poison the well, where if you really try and bend people's arm on this, that you're probably going to do yourself long-term a disservice. Look at remember Sony a couple of years ago had the fake reviewer they made up.
Who said that like a Rob Schneider movie was good, and they had to make the guy up to say that.
They did, but they did I think 3 or 4 movies
Yeah.
before they got caught on this, and Sony was just burned after that for years, and almost nobody believed anything about a Sony review because they're like, wow, they just make up another guy for this.
Well, I stopped paying attention to a lot just because when they run the the quote, and then you can barely read the name because it's in the tiniest text possible right underneath it.
Some radio show somewhere.
I just-
It's like, ain't it pretty cool news?
I stopped believing all of them. I was like, yeah, whatever. I'll ask a friend if they liked it. Back to the I mean, I stopped trusting not just on Sony movies.
So I mean, that is a real downside, but I mean, I think what it really comes down to is if you can put out a good game and have people talk positively about it, everybody wins.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much for coming here to chat about this, but I want you to stay around for a question of the week because it ties in with all of this. And it's about something so important to all of us, which is the other Avatar, The Last Airbender. Rock, this is RHAWK 187. That's police slang for murder, if you guys didn't know.
Again,
I grew up in the 90s.
Again with the morbid
Yeah.
stuff.
With The Last Airbender...
And pagers, which is the only reason people
Actually, you know what? It's also a really crappy movie with Sam
Good
Jackson that was made to emulate the feel and look of Seven and comes nowhere close to what that movie was like. With The Last Airbender garnering scathing reviews this past weekend, there has been a lot of discussion about movies that get horrible reviews still scoring big at the box office. We actually chatted about this just earlier. Do you recall any games with such poor reviews doing so well? Do you think there's a larger disconnect between movie reviewers and their target audience and game reviewers and theirs? I have one game that I can think of off the top of my head, and it's the only one, and that's the first 50 Cent game, which was...
Well, here's
Really bad.
here's a better question. Can you think of one that doesn't involve a license?
Jeff, can you think of a non-licensed game that...
Sort of defied?
I can't offhand. I mean, and it'd be a really interesting paradox. How does a game that's really good get bad review scores from, say, 100 critics? I mean, that is a really good question. Maybe there's something that all the critics hated. Maybe there's something that, they gave a really bad copy out, a buggy one to everybody beforehand to play. But, I mean, how would you get a really good game that gets completely bad reviews from everybody?
And also, the evaluative process for a game is so different than that of a movie, that there are 60, 70% of that game is just how it functions as a piece of technology. Mm-hmm. And then there's just kind of also fundamental good design, bad design. And then the grayest of areas is, does that still amount to something that is kind of new, fresh, and enjoyable? And that's usually the difference between an exceptionally good review and a strong recommendation, not, good to bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't generally find myself that out of step. There are games that I think sold a lot and made a lot of money and got very high review scores that I didn't like as much as everybody else did, but I wouldn't call them like utter abysmal failures.
But you still, as a critic, thought it was a good game. It just wasn't to your taste.
Yeah. Or it had flaws.
That's always one of the weird things about games is that you can respect the game mechanically for what it does while actively saying I don't like this game, but I think what it's trying to do, it does well.
And if you don't, and this is another thing I find interesting, I don't see this with movie reviewers, and this might be where the disconnect that Rock 187 was kind of getting at. I don't know if this is true or not, but do you play RTSs?
I did. StarCraft 2 will be the first one I've played in since StarCraft.
I'm trying to think of a type of game I don't play. Let's just pretend I don't play RTSs. MMOs. So you know what? No one's going to ask for me to review an MMO. Right. And I don't know if that's necessarily what we can expect from a movie reviewer, that they don't try to find someone who understands the Saw franchise then say, hey, you're going to go review it. And so then you get sometimes some very well-written negative reviews, but that are also just kind of veering off of the audience that might even want to know anything in the first place.
Well, that's a good point. The game reviewers are a lot more focused than necessarily movie reviewers. A good movie reviewer has to go review whatever comes out, where game reviewers, again, there's so many games, they usually get put towards
Well, it's also the act of watching a movie is capable. All movie reviewers are capable of that. Whereas when it comes to playing a game, there are certain skill levels.
Game, like I would never review Madden because I just don't care.
And you would need to know the rules of football.
Yeah, exactly. I learned those in Wikipedia.
I'm not a sports fan guy, but I can appreciate the quality of the game.
Right, exactly.
Sure, absolutely.
I never play, but I go, that's a really
not for me.
game.
Yeah.
But in terms of trying to actually hold it up against real life football, which I think, given what people who are going to be playing Madden are going to be expecting out of it, you want someone who's, someone like Andrew Pfister, who actually follows stuff like football.
Those rules and
keep
stuff.
me up to date. They
Rules
call it a
and things.
pigskin, I've been told. Really?
Not anymore. Not anymore.
So, well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. We do have a lot of other content up on the site pertaining to your study. I'm very excited that the stuff is up there and you guys came on. We have an interview, I believe it's with you, Patrick.
Yes.
With you and Jeff, and we have some stuff written about it. If people want to learn more about the study and the organization, where should they be going?
You can go to EEDAR.com,
Okay.
EEDAR.com, and I think tomorrow we're going to be sending out a good press blast and putting the study up for free for anybody who wants to see it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, check out the website. Look out for the press stuff. Really, really is fascinating, and I look forward. Do that second study. I'm now dying to find out. If we can hone in on what that's going to be. One more thing for everyone. Okay, so this is one of those new iPhone 4s, which the other ones were 1, 2, and 3. This isn't like the new 4 because that wouldn't make any sense. Anyway, what's that? That's Matt Kyle and Sterling McGarvey on feedback on a phone. What am I trying to tell you? Oh, that's what it is. G4 has an iPhone app. Go to g4tv.com/app, download it. It's free. It will make you happy. It will open up your life. And then, as we learned today from Jeffrey, tell a friend. Tell him it's so good. Once again, g4tv.com/app. It will make you a better person. It kind of improved me as well.
What does open up your life mean?
Open up your life? Well, aren't you closed? Like a little closed in your life?
Okay.
I don't know. It's probably like a song from Hair that I completely mangled in my head.
Fair enough.
Do you play World of Warcraft or one of its 1,000 clones? Do you know what a mob or pug is? Then you'll want to make sure to check out the MMO Report. It gives you all the massively multiplayer online news you could want in a neat little package named Casey Schreiner. Check out all new episodes every Thursday over at g4tv.com/MMO. You're welcome.